Spring training day is upon us, and that means we are just that bit closer to the 2019 season. With that being said, there are still a ton of questions left unanswered for a lot of the teams in Major League Baseball. So as you can tell from the title of today's video, we're going to be going over the biggest question for each team for the 2019 MLB season. Of course, I will explain my reasoning for why these are the biggest question for each team. I would love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Get involved, interact. We do such a great job, so keep it up. Remember, leave a like on this video if you do enjoy it. Best way to support the channel. Subscribe if you're new and you want to see more of this content. We are so close to 39K. And follow me on Twitter and Instagram at GiraffeNeckMarc. Links in the description. Best way to keep the conversation going. So let's get it started off with the American League East. First team on the list, the Toronto Blue Jays. We know about Vlad Guerrero Jr. We know about Bo Bichette. We know about that young core they're building. When are they finally going to come up? Are we going to see Vlad Guerrero Jr. start on the opening day roster? Or is he going to come up a little bit later in April? Is he going to come up in May? Bo Bichette, yes, the guy has all the talent in the world. Is he ready? Are we going to see him come up for the Blue Jays this year? Toronto is not in a win now scenario. They're definitely rebuilding. They don't have the strongest pitching staff, not the strongest bullpen. The lineup has some bits and pieces here. You got good players like Justin Smoke, but everyone wants to see Vlad Guerrero Jr. come up and play. That's all we've been hearing about for what feels like the last 2 seasons. The guy has so much talent. I'm super excited to see Vlad Guerrero Jr. play. I want to see all this potential that we've been hearing about him in the minor leagues. I want to see Bo Bichette come up this year. So it's a matter of when. When are we going to see these guys finally get their chance with the Blue Jays? The Baltimore Orioles. Yeah, the Baltimore Orioles were bad last season, winning only 47 games. We obviously know that Chris Davis has one of the worst contracts, if not the worst contract in all of baseball. Doesn't look like they'll be able to move him anytime soon. The real question is for the Baltimore Orioles, who's worth keeping and who's worth getting rid of? While it may not seem like a big year for the Baltimore Orioles, they do have a lot of ways to become a better organization. And part of that is by evaluating their talent correctly. Can guys like Jonathan VR and Mark Trumbo have big seasons and maybe have some value at the deadline to get more prospects? The Orioles are in no way competing for an AL East title this season. Can they expedite the process by trying to get some better prospects? The Tampa Bay Rays. Can the Tampa Bay Rays repeat their 2018 season, which honestly was incredible for them, winning 90 games? No one saw that coming. Will the opener continue to work for them in 2019? In 2018, as we know, the Tampa Bay Rays implemented the opener, which was where they take one of their bullpen guys and start him off for 1 inning at the start of the game. Guy like Sergio Romo last year, Ryan Stanek would come in, pitch an inning, and then they'd go to their next pitcher. This is something new. This is something that baseball hadn't seen before. But is this a gimmick? Is this something that is here to stay? Is this actually the new way baseball is going to be played? The Rays had the Cy Young Award winner on their team last year in Blake Snell. They signed Charlie Morton. So it's a matter of, will the opener continue to be as effective for the 2019 season? I don't think so. I think it's a gimmick. I think it was a fad. But the Rays have proved us all wrong in the past, and maybe they will continue to prove us wrong in 2019. The Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox, of course, are coming off a World Series championship in 2018. There's not a whole lot of questions left with this team, except one: bullpen. Who's going to be the closer for the Red Sox going into the 2019 season? Craig Kimbrell still remains on the market. Will he come back? Joe Kelly left for the Dodgers in free agency. I mean, the Red Sox bullpen, listen, it performed well last year considering they didn't have a whole lot of names out there. But right now, the closer position is still kind of up for grabs. So for the Red Sox, who's your closer? Who's it going to be? What's the deal with that bullpen? That's pretty much it, though. They're a pretty damn good team. The New York Yankees. We all know about how dominant that offense is for the New York Yankees, and it might have gotten even stronger. But the biggest question continues to be the first base position for the Yankees. Who's going to play there? Listen, Luke Voit had a great second half of the season for the Yankees last year. But do we really think he's going to hit like that for a full season? You've got the question of Greg Bird. What's the deal with him? You guys know I'm a huge Greg Bird fan. Will he finally look like a Major League Baseball player who can hit? In a right-handed dominant lineup, the Yankees would love to have Greg Bird step up and be that left-handed power bat. But with Luke Voit playing well and Greg Bird playing poorly, it brings up a tough decision. And if it is Luke Voit, will he continue to produce at the extremely high level he did for the Yankees last season? I just don't know. I thought Justin Bour was the perfect fit there and they didn't get him. I thought it was out there. How did they not get Justin Bour? Off to the American League Central now. We start off with the Cleveland Indians. Who is going to play the outfield for the Cleveland Indians in 2019? Listen, I like some of the young guys they have out there, but right now that outfield is as follows: Bradley Zimmer, Tyler Naquin, Greg Allen. Yeah, that's not an outfield of a team that can win the World Series in 2019. Do they go out and get a guy like Adam Jones maybe? I mean, they have such a strong team otherwise. That starting rotation is one of the best in all of baseball. But the outfield, that's a weak outfield. So it's obvious. The biggest question has to be their outfield. How are they going to produce with those 3 guys out there? Can that really be the outfield they rock with for all of 2019? I just don't see it. They got to get somebody. The Kansas City Royals. Listen, the Royals are not competing in 2019 for a playoff spot. But their biggest question has to be their bullpen, which was the worst in the American League last year. They had an American League worst 5.04 ERA, and their whip was 1.54, again, worse than the American League. This is a team that when they were doing their best back in 2014, 2015, was built on a strong bullpen. So for 2019, while this may not be huge, they don't have a lot of giant questions. How is that bullpen going to perform? How are they going to make it improve? Because last year, the Royals bullpen was horrendous. The Detroit Tigers, another team in the American League Central who doesn't seem to be competing anytime soon. Biggest question for them is going to have to be, what are they doing with Nick Castellanos? He's a free agent in the upcoming 2020 offseason. There have been trade rumors for what feels like the last few years about whether or not the Tigers are going to move him, what the future plans are. In my personal opinion, the Tigers have to trade him. He is not a part of the future for this organization. You need to get as much back as possible for Nick Castellanos. Help build up that farm system, help build for the future. Along with Nick Castellanos, what's the deal with Michael Fulmer? Are they going to move Michael Fulmer? I know that it's only one big question for each of these teams, but really the total question is, who are they going to trade at the deadline? The Minnesota Twins. What's the deal with Byron Buxton and Miguel Sano? Byron Buxton, as we know, was one of the top prospects in all of baseball a few years ago, but since he's come up with the Twins in major leagues, he has not been good at all. And Miguel Sano, another guy, has a lot of talent, but is having a lot of trouble at the major league level. I don't feel like the Minnesota Twins can fully move forward without addressing the question of what to do with Byron Buxton or Miguel Sano. Are these guys worth holding on to and trying to fix? Or is it time to move on from these guys and look forward past them? So 2019 is almost a make or break year for these players. They've got to show their worth so that the Minnesota Twins can kind of figure out what to do. The Chicago White Sox. The biggest question for the White Sox has to be, what does their team look like moving forward? We've heard all offseason that they're interested in Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, but neither of those guys have signed to them as of the time I'm recording this video. What does their future look like? Of course, you've got that great young pitching staff moving forward. You've got Eloy Jimenez, who I can't wait to see play. The dude looks like he's going to be a beast. But for the 2020 offseason, they pretty much have no contracts left on the books besides the guys who are in arbitration. So what is the future for the Chicago White Sox? Do they get Manny Machado? Do they get a Bryce Harper? Do they make a strong push for some free agents? Or do they continue to kind of be mediocre, be a bad team in the American League Central, and maybe make a push in the 2020 offseason? Heading out to the American League West, starting it off with the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros' biggest question for the 2019 season has to be that rotation. They lost Charlie Morton to free agency. Dallas Keuchel, as of right now, hasn't signed to a team, and Lance McCullers is going to be out for the entire 2019 season. That leaves you with Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander. That's a lot of innings that the Houston Astros are losing from the rotation from 2018, which was one of the best in all of baseball. You got guys like Josh James, Colin McHugh, who are going to be filling in. Can they really take over that back end of the rotation and take over that workload that guys like Keuchel, McCullers, and Morton have been handling the last few years? We all know that the Astros are one of the best teams in all of baseball, but if that back end of the rotation can't be successful, it will definitely be a tough battle for them in the playoffs. So surprisingly, one of the best teams in all of baseball has one of the biggest questions. The Oakland A's, another team that made the playoffs in 2018, a bit of a surprise. Biggest question for them has to be pitching. Let's be honest, last season they got incredible performances from their pitching staff. They had guys like Edwin Jackson, Tim Cahill, Brett Anderson, Mike Fiers. They were going out there and pitching their hearts out. For 2019, they got no Sean Manaea until probably halfway through the season, and they do have some young arms like Jesus Luzardo, who will be coming up in 2019 to pitch for the major league team. But really, is that starting rotation one of the best in all of baseball? Can they compete with that rotation and try to make a push for the wild card in the American League? But as we've seen in the past, and I'm sure we'll see in the future, the A's find these diamonds in the roughs that make huge impacts for their teams for that current season. Let's be honest, pitching, definitely a question for the A's. The Seattle Mariners. As we know, the Mariners this offseason got rid of guys like Edwin Diaz, Robinson Cano, James Paxton was sent to the Yankees. The Mariners are in a rebuilding phase. Through these trades, they took on some contracts with guys that could be movable at the trade deadline. If they have good seasons and are valuable at the trade deadline, the Mariners have to trade them. It's just a matter of, are the Mariners going to do that? Are they going to be able to trade some of these older players and acquire more talent to help boost up that farm system? Similar to a lot of the teams in the American League, the Texas Rangers are in a rebuilding phase. It doesn't look like they'll be a team competing for a playoff spot in 2019. Similar to the Orioles, I think it's about time that the Rangers start evaluating the talent that they have and whether or not it's time to keep them or move on. Guys like Rougned Odor, Joey Gallo, Nomar Mazara. We saw them move Jurickson Profar to the A's in the offseason. Is it time for some of these guys to move on from the Texas Rangers? Because as of right now, they're really not doing much for them. So is it time to keep these guys and really build around them and push? Or is it time to get rid of them and try to get as many prospects as possible back to help that rebuild? The Los Angeles Angels. Shohei Ohtani took over the Los Angeles Angels by storm last year. That's all you could talk about when you talk about the Angels. Well, and of course Mike Trout, which leads us to the biggest question of 2019, which is the future of the Los Angeles Angels with Mike Trout. Now, Mike Trout's not a free agent until the 2021 offseason, but he's down to his final 2 years of his contract, and the Los Angeles Angels would be crazy to try to not re-sign this guy to a long-term deal if it's possible. But that's the biggest question. Is it going to happen? Does Mike Trout want to stay with the Angels for the future? He is truly the definition of a once-in-a-generation type player. This could be the best player of all time when his career is over, said and done. So are the Angels going to be able to try to renegotiate his contract? Try to get him an extension before he does hit that 2021 offseason, which is crazy because, of course, we're talking 2019 right now. But really, the biggest story is, can they keep Mike Trout around? All right, now we're on to the National League East, starting it off with the NL East. So let's start off with the New York Mets. There's a lot of questions with the New York Mets, but I think the biggest one has to be with Jacob deGrom. Are they going to be able to get Jacob deGrom a contract extension? He's not a free agent until 2021, similar to Mike Trout, but all we've been hearing about the last few years is a Jacob deGrom contract extension. As we know, Brodie Van Wagenen, the current GM of the New York Mets, was Jacob deGrom's agent last season. And one of the comments he had last season was how the Mets need to give Jacob deGrom a contract extension or trade him. Well, now he's the GM. The ball's in his court. Is he going to give deGrom a contract extension, or are they just going to let the season play out and let tension build? Make Jacob deGrom happy. Pay the man, Brodie. The Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves rebuild process sped up a ton last season, winning the American League East, honestly out of nowhere. No one was calling it. But the Braves haven't made a ton of moves this offseason. They got Josh Donaldson, but that's kind of it. The Braves still don't really have that #1 type ace player. Personally, I see Dallas Keuchel being a perfect fit there, or trading for a guy like Madison Bumgarner. As a Met fan, I'd hate to see it happen, but the Braves are in a situation with their farm system where it's absolutely loaded. They could trade some of those guys and get a top-end starter to really help out that rotation. The Miami Marlins. Yeah, the joke of baseball. Honestly, the biggest question is, can the Marlins win 50 games, or will they be the Baltimore Orioles of the National League? Now, the Marlins last year, they weren't nearly as bad as everyone expected, and they have had some players show better development than we once thought, but they just traded JT Realmuto, and honestly, this Marlins team, I know they signed Sergio Romo, but they're not very good. So, like, maybe I'm crazy, but are the Marlins going to win more than 50 games this year? Like, honestly, especially with the National League East being one of the best divisions in all of baseball, Mets, Phillies, Nationals, Braves have all gotten better. It's going to be tough for the Marlins to win a lot of baseball games this year. The Washington Nationals. Honestly, the biggest question for the Washington Nationals has to be contracts going into 2019. They're obviously still in it with Bryce Harper. We've heard about the contracts that they've offered him. I could legitimately see him re-signing with the Nationals if that 10 for $300 million is the true offer. But then they also got guys like Anthony Rendon who are coming up on a contract year. And he's honestly one of the more underrated third basemen in all of baseball. I think he's fantastic. So with the Nationals, they have to start valuing the contracts that they give out to players, or are they just going to be one of these teams that spends as much money as possible and doesn't care about the luxury tax? They just gave a lot of money to Patrick Corbin. Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg are making $30+ million a year. If they get Bryce Harper back, he'll be making $30+ million a year. It will be interesting to see what the Washington Nationals do for the future, because obviously last year was a fluke. They're a very good baseball team, and honestly are my opinion to win the National League East for 2019. But they've got a lot of money on the table and a lot of things to think about for the future. It'll be interesting to see what they do for 2019. The Philadelphia Phillies. Harper or Machado. Are they getting one of these guys? They've made a lot of moves. They got Andrew McCutchen. They got David Robertson. They made a huge trade getting JT Realmuto. They got Gene Segura. But are they going to be able to get that final piece of the puzzle? Bryce Harper, Manny Machado. If not them, Keuchel, Kimbrel. The Phillies have a lot of young talent, but that team is still not ready to be the best team in the National League East, in my opinion. Aaron Nola, stud. But the rest of that rotation, weak. Even though the Phillies have made a lot of improvements this offseason, they are still not done. But if they can add a guy like Harper, Machado, Kimbrel, Keuchel, it's a different story. So it's just, who do they get? I guess that's the biggest question. Who do the Phillies get? They need that final piece. The National League Central, another division that is extremely strong. The Milwaukee Brewers. How do the Milwaukee Brewers not have an ace yet? How have they not made a move for Dallas Keuchel? How have they not made a move for Madison Bumgarner? How have they not made a move for anyone? Everyone who talks about baseball knows that the Brewers need that #1 guy. I understand last year they did it without him, but at some point you need to get that guy who can come in every single game, pitch 7 or 8 innings, and shut opposing lineups down. You can't keep throwing Jhoulys Chacin out there and saying he's your ace. What is the future plan for the Brewers starting rotation? So many questions. The St. Louis Cardinals. I'm kind of torn between what the biggest question for the Cardinals is in 2019. I'm leaning between Paul Goldschmidt contract extension and what to do with Dexter Fowler. So you know what? I'll go with what to do with Dexter Fowler. Because since coming to the St. Louis Cardinals, he has not been very good for them. And he doesn't have the greatest contract in the world. With 3 years left getting paid $16.5 million a year, yes, it is not the most team-friendly contract. But at the same time, if the Cardinals take a good portion of that in a trade, they could maybe get rid of Dexter Fowler, because let's be honest, he's not a part of the future of this team. They've got young talent in Harrison Bader, Tyler O'Neill. Marcell Ozuna is not going anywhere. Dexter Fowler has no spot left on this team, and honestly, that money's rotting away on the bench. They need to get some value for him. It's just a matter of who's going to take Dexter Fowler. Can the Cardinals move him? The Chicago Cubs. I think the biggest question for the Chicago Cubs is about Joe Maddon. Joe Maddon was a little bit on the hot seat towards the end of last year. As of right now, Joe Maddon does not have a contract extension past the 2019 season. Joe Girardi, former MLB manager, could have had jobs this offseason, but he waited. He's waiting for that Cubs position. So with Joe Maddon, he pretty much has to put up or shut up this season. If the Cubs don't have a World Series type season, now I'm not saying they have to win it, but they have to make a strong push. Otherwise, he's out of there, and with the National League Central being so competitive, the Reds have gotten better, the Cardinals have gotten better, the Brewers are good. If the Cubs don't make a strong push, let alone make the playoffs this season, Joe Maddon's gone. The Pittsburgh Pirates. The biggest question for the Pittsburgh Pirates has to be whether or not they're a team that wants to contend, or are they trying to rebuild? We saw them trade Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows away for Chris Archer last year, trying to make a push, but of course that wasn't successful. They have talent with Starling Marte, Josh Bell, Gregory Polanco. What is the move for the Pittsburgh Pirates? The worst thing that they can do is continue to be a mediocre ball club. Is it time to rebuild and tear it all down, try to get as much value for the players that you have as possible? Or do they make that push? Do they make some trades? Do they make some signings to try to be a team that competes in the National League? Cincinnati Reds. I think the biggest question for the Cincinnati Reds is what kind of team are they? We thought that they were in the rebuilding process, but as we've seen from the 2019 offseason, that may not be the case. They've added Sonny Gray, they've added Matt Kemp, Alex Wood, Yasiel Puig. Now, a lot of these guys have expiring contracts in the upcoming offseason, but we've also heard rumors about them trying to trade for Corey Kluber. They were interested in JT Realmuto, and they were willing to trade some prospects. So what's the future look like for the Reds? Are they going to try and make a push to make the playoffs this current season? Or are they going to use guys like Yasiel Puig, Matt Kemp, Alex Wood, and leverage them to try to get more prospects and try and make that rebuild process just a little bit quicker? Down to the final division, we're in the National League West. Arizona Diamondbacks. We know that the Arizona Diamondbacks are in a rebuilding phase. They got rid of Paul Goldschmidt. Now the biggest question left unanswered is what to do with Zach Greinke. They've got to trade him, right? He's not a part of that future. We know he's got a huge contract, signing a 6-year, $200+ million deal back in 2016. Now, Zach Greinke has been productive for the Diamondbacks. He's actually been a very good pitcher. But going into his 36-year-old season, and he's not a free agent until 2022, it's going to be tough to move him. So really the biggest question for the Diamondbacks is, can they move Zach Greinke this season? Because if they can, that will definitely help them speed up the rebuilding process. The Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers have been to back-to-back World Series. There's not a whole lot of questions with this team. Of course, catching, Austin Barnes seems to be their guy because obviously they didn't get Realmuto. But I think the biggest question has to be their bullpen. Kenley Jansen by no means had a bad season last year, still a 3 ERA. But are we going to see the Kenley Jansen of the past come back? I mean, MLB Network didn't even have this guy in their top 10 relievers in all baseball. They added Joe Kelly to their bullpen, but overall the Dodgers don't have the strongest bullpen by any means. So are we going to see Kenley Jansen and some of these guys return to their old form, or is the bullpen going to be a huge problem for the Dodgers for the 2019 season? The San Francisco Giants. What are they doing? Are they rebuilding? Are they pushing for a championship? We've heard rumors that they might be offering Bryce Harper a short-term deal with a lot of money, which would then lead you to believe that they're trying to contend in 2019. They want to win now. But then if they don't get Bryce Harper, that team really isn't very good. We saw them struggle a lot last season. Madison Bumgarner's on a contract year. Is it time to trade him and try to get as much back as possible for him? Buster Posey hasn't been producing at an MVP level like we've seen in the past, and he's had some injuries. They've got a very old team and not a very deep prospect farm system. So what is the future for the San Francisco Giants? They need to make a decision. Farhan Zaidi needs to choose. Are they pushing to win now, or is it time to tear it all down and start over again? The San Diego Padres. Similar to the Blue Jays, the Padres have a stud prospect that everyone wants to see come up in Fernando Tatis Jr. But I don't think that's really the biggest question for them, because the Padres have a ton of prospects in the farm system. In the next few years, they're going to be just fine. But the biggest question has to be what to do with Will Myers. There's obviously some issues with him and the manager, Andy Green. We know the problems that they had there. And he really doesn't seem like a future part of the San Diego Padres plan. So can the Padres trade Will Myers, who still has a lot of potential and is still a very good player, and maybe get a piece that can help them push forward even quicker in this rebuilding process? Because as we know, their farm system, oh my god, is absolutely loaded with talent. Can they maybe trade him and get some better starting pitching, better bullpen help? Because the Padres pitching, it's not too strong. And the final team of the video, the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies, of course, made the playoffs the last 2 seasons. They have a very good team, a nice pitching core, which is something that you don't say often about the Rockies. Pitching usually is a problem, but the biggest question for them is what to do with Nolan Arenado. Can they sign him to a contract extension? Nolan Arenado is without a doubt one of the best third basemen, if not the best third baseman in all of baseball. Gold Glove fielder, the dude can hit. He can absolutely smack a ball around the field. But he's a free agent for the 2020 offseason. Do the Rockies have the money to give him, to get him that big long-term contract that he wants? Does he even want to stay in Colorado? The Nolan Arenado situation will be something to monitor throughout the 2019 season because, of course, he is a free agent. He is having an expiring contract. If the Rockies aren't competing, do they move him at the deadline? If you're the Rockies, you've got to keep this guy. You've got to keep Nolan Arenado. He's so good. But with guys like Brendan Rodgers and Garrett Hampson coming up through the farm system, there's a lot to think about. Although, personally, it's Nolan Arenado. That's who you keep. So those are the biggest questions for each team for the 2019 season, in my opinion. I'd love to know what you guys think about all the stuff I said in this video in the comment section down below. Remember to leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it. Help support the channel. Subscribe if you're new and you enjoy the content. We talk about baseball almost every day on here. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at GiraffeNeckMarc. Links in the description. And that's going to be it for this video. YouTube recommends you watch this video right here, as well as this is my most recent upload. So click through those to help support the channel. Thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate all of you giving me your views and your time of day each day. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.